Hello, I'm Greg Regan, President of the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. I'm here today with Congressman Rick Larsen of Washington's 2nd Congressional District to talk about how the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law makes long-term investments in well-paying jobs and green transit. Congressman Larsen is a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and has been a true champion of green transit and good union jobs throughout his time in Congress. Congressman, it's great to be with you.
Thanks for inviting me. I look forward to this.
So let's talk about, first of all, some of the investments you're most proud of in this bill and how it's going to directly impact the people that you represent and the people of Washington State.
Yeah, so in Washington State, we are going to receive about $5.3 billion over the next 5 years for investments in roads, bridges, and highways, and additional $1.5 to $2 billion in investment in transit as well. So I'm looking forward to both our state of Washington using those formula dollars to supplement what we can do. For instance, in our state legislature right now is putting together a transportation package, and 21% of the funding for that is coming from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But there are a number of competitive grant programs that we'll be able to benefit from. All of them, I'll say most of them, in construction of projects. It could be runways at our airports. It could be new bus orders for local transit agencies, buying American-made buses, whether those are diesel or in the future, much more electric transit. Again, American-made transit. And that's going to require training and retraining and ensuring that we have the transportation workforce as well, and the construction workforce to support all this work.
And that's a really important point, frankly, is sort of how we're actually investing in workers and investing in our communities while we're giving our infrastructure system a much needed facelift. You look at transit in particular and greening transit. That is a massive source of greenhouse gas emissions in our country, transportation. The money in this bill for greening transit, I think there's $5.625 billion for the low or no emission vehicle bus program. So that is going to make a big impact. That is going to affect everybody's, the lives of everyone in the communities in Washington and throughout the country. But the other problem that we've seen over the years is the lack of institutional investment in workforce training in transit in particular. Right now, historically, less than 1% of expenditures are going to job training, on-the-job training. And this changes in the IIJA. Can you talk a little bit about how Congress prioritized job training and workforce development?
Yeah, with the IIJA, we tried to tie pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training programs to the actual work that needs to get done. This is going to bring in our unions early on in the process when it comes to planning and designing and thinking about which projects need to get done and how they're going to get done. I think of, thinking on the issue of green transit. There are a couple of transit agencies in my district, Everett Transit and Whatcom Transit, that already have electric buses, but they want to expand their fleet. But to do that, you have to have the operation and maintenance crew that is ready, willing, and able to do maintenance and repair on these new buses. So that's going to require training and retraining. So you have to tie the training and retraining of your crew to this investment. In addition to that, I talked to one transit agency, and they had a driver who just did not want to drive an electric bus. He, in particular, just felt uncomfortable doing it. And they said, that's fine. I mean, he was an older driver. There's still plenty of other buses he could drive, but it does drive differently. And so you need to, as well, train and retrain your coach drivers in order to achieve these goals in green transit. And I think the value and the goal of pulling these diesel emissions out of the air for cleaner air in our communities is important. It's also where the technology is taking us. And we need to tie workforce training and retraining with the new technologies that give us different opportunities in the future. And we're able to do that with the IIJA.
Well, that's really great. And one of the things that we've always said is that as we start to develop new technology, whether it be low emission or zero emission buses, whether it be even autonomous technology, with the amount of money that the government is investing here, which again is much needed, the largest investment in infrastructure in our history. The key part here is also sustaining a workforce that's going to be able to operate all of this in a way that meets the expectations of what we think of when we're investing in transit. So having this type of workforce training, national workforce training for people to learn not only how to operate these new vehicles, how to maintain them, but so that people's careers can grow along with the tech as we start integrating it into our communities.
Yeah, we have a transportation infrastructure built on a foundation of the 1950s. Mm-hmm. And we really need to think about what that transportation infrastructure foundation is going to look like in the 2050s and plan for that. It is going to change. It's going to stay the same in some areas. It's going to change in other areas. I visited the IBEW training facility in south of Seattle, south of my district, where included in everything else and all the other curriculum they have for their apprenticeship program, they've introduced a new module for installation of EV or electric vehicle charging stations at home. Do not do this at home. Call a professional. As the IBEW folks that I know will say, putting this charging station in isn't like plugging in a microwave. It's not like plugging in your refrigerator. This is like plugging in 7,000 smartphones at one time. You need a professional, and so the local union is seeing this opportunity, knowing this opportunity is coming, knowing there's going to be a growing demand for EVs, and is building the workforce so that it is ready to support the demand of electric vehicle infrastructure. So those are the kinds of things unions can step out in front and do, and not wait for us, the federal government. But at the same time, the IAJA seeks to marry up the changes that are going to need to occur with the workforce training and apprenticeships that will need to occur to support those changes.
That's absolutely right. And I think there are going to be so many opportunities for working people and for unions in particular to try to meet the demands that are going to be created by all of this new investment. One of those areas certainly is in transit and construction, but also on Amtrak. And you look at what our vision are, is $66 billion invested in passenger rail in this bill. That is a huge amount of money for Amtrak. And it's something that, again, is long overdue and much needed. And if you look at what we can achieve with that in terms of creating more mobility options for people throughout the country to make it a reliable way to get between medium-sized and larger cities, certainly on trips that are 500 miles or less, but it needs to be integrated with the rest of the community's transportation network. How can you see Washington State benefiting from the Amtrak investment and the investment in passenger rail?
Well, there's a couple of ways. One is for Amtrak long distance routes. There's two of them that run in and out of the state. One is an east-west Empire Builder, and the other is a Coast Starlight. Both going in Seattle, but the Empire Builder then goes to my hometown of Everett, Washington as well. And early on through the ARP, American Rescue Plan, Amtrak was able to expand the number of daily trips from, it came down to 3 per week, and now it was back up to 7 daily trips for both Empire Builder and Coast Starlight. But with the IAJA, in that $66 billion investment over several years that you mentioned, there is both the investment in the Northeast Corridor, which is the DC to New York corridor, as well as in the state Amtrak or in state supported lines as well. Washington State has works with Amtrak to do a state supported line. So we're starting to see how the state will use those dollars, including the reintroduction on rail of the Amtrak Cascades route, which is the route that was shut down because it goes into Canada. It goes to Vancouver, Canada, to Seattle, and then it connects in Seattle these other routes, and then down to Eugene, but then it connects with other routes there in Seattle. The point there is that you're bringing back people, you're bringing back jobs, but we have to, all those folks who who operate the train, who work on the train, have to be recertified because they haven't been on this route for 2 years because of the shutdown. And we get a chance then to move beyond the 1 a day or 2 a day, maybe 3 a day as demand picks up. So there are going to be further opportunities to work on the Amtrak Cascades. This is an example of a state-supported program, and I think there are 30 states or so that have state-supported routes as well.
Yes.
So as this gets implemented over 5 years, hopefully, I do think we'll see more people use these routes that are short, for the lack of a better term, short haul or short distance,
right,
if you will. As that demand grows, then that provides opportunities for hiring.
It does. I've often thought that it's not a surprise that you have been so focused on transportation and infrastructure during your time in Congress, because you look at where you're located, where your district is located, and you have every major component of transportation, be it maritime, passenger rail, transit, aviation, both freight and passenger. All of this is right there in your district. And so we do need to, I think you understand as well as anybody, that these are not siloed institutions. They are all connected. They all need to be functioning in order to see the best results for the American people. And if you look at what happened with the supply chain problems over the past year, I mean, that sort of emphasizes that it's not none of these operate independently. You have your maritime component to it, you have the freight rail component, you have trucking component, and all of the investment that's going in this bill will help make that cleaner, will help make that more efficient, including intermodal connectivity at ports, making sure that our freight rail system is linked up with our warehousing systems and everything like that. So what comes next? How do you see this playing out over the next couple of years?
Well, just to underline what you just said about my district, and you overlay that with the infrastructure bill that is now the law, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. I-5, Interstate 5 runs north-south, so you got the roads and the bridges and the highways bit. We have 2 major pipelines that runs north-south, so pipeline safety issues that we've been dealing with over the last several years, and the importance of having good union labor build those pipelines so that we know they're as safe as possible. The rail you mentioned, I got several ports in the district, including one right outside my window, so I can see the work that the maritime work. That's good. And let's not forget in the infrastructure bill, the broadband infrastructure part, because there'll be folks in the communications field, as well as electrical workers, as well as others, putting in broadband infrastructure throughout the country, both in urban, suburban, and rural areas and tribal reservations. And then there's a climate resiliency part too. We just had horrific floods over the last fall, and it really underscored the need for climate resilient infrastructure, which again is part of the IIJA. So if there is a transportation infrastructure issue in my district, it is also can be cured a little bit by the infrastructure bill. So I think over the next couple of years, in the immediate sense, we in Congress need to conduct aggressive oversight over the spending of the dollars that we approved. We want the administration to look at congressional intent, what we meant to happen, and make that happen. So I'd expect the subcommittees to continue to look at how the money is being spent, what the administration is saying in terms of when they do these notices for funding opportunities for communities to try to get these dollars. So you're gonna see a lot of oversight over the next 6 to 9 months through the end of the year. And then, then we're just into year 1 of the bill. Year 2, 3, and 4 is going to be continuing that. But I think one of the hiccups, Greg, as we've talked about, is it's not the quality of the workforce, it's the numbers, it's the amount of workforce that's available to do these projects in a timely and efficient and effective manner. It won't be a matter of projects won't get done because the money's not there. It's because we need to invest in long-term in a workforce and attract people into these good union jobs that are going to pay really well for folks. And that's true all over the transportation field, whether it's pilots or flight attendants, mechanics at airports, coach drivers, transit drivers, train drivers, conductors, AKA conductors, and many other folks. So we have a lot of work to do, which is my which is why my bipartisan bill was included in the infrastructure bill that would give direction to the Department of Transportation to promote opportunities for careers in transportation. We need to let people know that there are jobs to be had in transportation, in all aspects of transportation. And that's where unions come in as well, and promoting that along with the Department of Transportation.
And that's why the worker protections that are in this bill are so important from my view, because they need to be, in order to attract and sustain the workforce that's going to be needed, we need to make sure they're quality jobs. For us, that means union jobs, the ability to bargain for wages and benefits, your ability to make sure that you have a say in the safety at your workplace, in the work rules that are being implemented. All of those things are made stronger with the union presence. So the workforce protections that were built in this bill make it easier for these to be jobs that people want to go do. They're going to be fairly compensated for their work. They're going to see the benefits of a union contract. And, frankly, I know that on behalf of our 36 unions, we're ready to do that work. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we build that workforce that will not only allow us to build all the things we want to do with this bill, but continue to operate it for decades to come. So we're excited about the opportunity, that's for sure.
Great, that's great. Well, I'm looking forward to continue to work with you all and the folks at the TTD, and as we move through this bill, I certainly want to hear more from you all about how we can do better in implementation.
Well, that's great, and maybe once these things start moving, I can come out and see it for myself up in Washington.